not great, but it's not complete trash. I appreciate some of the directional takes on here. People may not agree with it, may not like it, but I appreciate them at least going outside the box, trying something different. You took a risk. Not everything is going to be a good risk to take.
Otherwise, it wouldn't be a risk.
It's definitely a risk. Like, there are definitely multiple risks taken in this movie.
Yes.
Because the flow and things like that aren't necessarily there. But this is not like Madam Web level bad.
Hey, it's the Untitled Film Project Podcast, and we're going to talk about Joker 2. To limit the eye rolls, we're just not going to say Joker FOLIE A DEUX. So let's just call it Joker 2.
Before we even get into this, though, do you guys know what FOLIE A DEUX means?
I know
something second.
Do is 2. It's the second, but it's a folly because it's a musical.
The second song.
Well, guess.
The second
part. When I tell you, it's
sorry. Popcorn.
Foley.
When I tell you, it's going to be a light bulb moment and explain, and it's going to make you go, oh, okay. It's not going to be this huge revelation.
Oh, okay.
But it's making you go, oh, okay.
Okay, so you've made us wait for a disappointment.
Basically.
All right.
At least it's not Madam Web again. So, FOLIE A DEUX means basically when two people share the same delusion.
Oh, okay. Well, that fits.
That tracks.
Now, my call on your reaction was right on point. I
Okay.
just need to make sure we know that because people are talking about this, but they're not even talking about the name of the movie and how it coincides and correlates.
Either way, it's
with what
Joker
goes on.
2 for the
Joker
rest
2
of the
it is.
Joker 2.
Uh-oh, I'm in trouble.
So most of this movie, it's in prison. And Arthur Fleck is on trial for the murders he committed in the first film. But this time he's fallen in love with Lady Gaga's Lee Quinzel. And it's a musical. We're going to talk about that. And we'll have the big question that we would love your input on.
On this episode of the Untitled Film Project Podcast, the big question is, what actor, any gender you would like, what actor has jumped the shark in your mind?
All right. And I want to know where. Like, when did it happen?
Yeah, what point did that happen for you?
Like date and time?
It could be.
Project. Let's say project. What project did the actor that you have in mind be like, oh, it was definitely in...
You can point to that moment where they vroom over the shark. Joker 2, dividing audiences around the world. Initial impressions. Let's start with Jeremy Gover.
I'm going to cut right to the chase here, guys. I think the entire movie, between him watching Harvey Dent on television, talking about his trial, when he's in the room with his fellow Arkham mates and starts singing his first song, I think that whole point, until the final scene, where he is sitting in the chair with his fellow Arkham mates.
Spoilers.
Lots of them.
Everybody knows. Just making sure.
Yeah, that's true. Before I say anything, that's true. Okay, all right, all right, we got that? Great. So I think that whole thing is a fantasy in his brain because it begins and ends with what's on the TV, which is when Harvey Dent is done, right? They're watching Pepe Le Pew. And they're watching Pepe Le Pew in the final scene as well. But here's the thing. And this is why it's my initial take. If you told me right now, you go, oh, well, that can't work because this happened before this. Okay. I don't care. Like, I'm not prepared to go watch it again to prove my theory, and I'm not bullish enough on it to where I'm going to fight you. I'm
right.
like a dog who's not an alpha. I'm immediately going to lay down.
Right.
Go right ahead. I
You
don't
will
care.
not be setting up a table outside of a theater saying, it was, all a dream between these 2 points.
Yeah, prove me wrong.
Prove me wrong.
Yeah. That is not going to happen.
Okay.
Because I don't care. And I think that's actually the problem with this film. I don't care. Bradford.
Excellent. I love that.
Okay. Maybe this will trigger discussion.
Okay.
It's not great, but I don't think it's as bad as it's getting railed on
I agree.
on social media.
I agree.
And the reason I say that is from a certain perspective. This is not going to be for everyone. Not everyone's going to enjoy this. This is meant, I think, for a very small segment of audience.
But you know what? When you said 200 million...
Exactly. Totally.
Yes.
So my quick description of this film is dark, demented theater kid fever dream.
That's a pretty good description.
I'll take it.
Yeah.
That's because
Yeah.
when it breaks into song, that's the theater kid moment coming out, because that's what happens. Like, you could just be sitting on a couch having a discussion, a bunch of theater kids. I say it as a theater kid.
Oh, yeah.
And all of a sudden, you just break into song.
Yeah.
Because in the film, they're breaking into song to express themselves, and it's not actually happening. That's what's going on in their mind, right?
Right.
And this is where I think we're going to have a deeper discussion once we get through this on, is it musical or not? Because of where the music fits in with it. Does it make it a true musical or whatever? But all that to be said, I felt like the third act was rough for me. Like, it dragged. It dragged so much. There's so many problems in the movie itself, especially when you see, I want to call number one a masterpiece, but how good number one overall was in showing society's problems and how society can help develop villains within our own lives, whether it's in a superhero movie or just a film like this, or in real life, what society's impact has on people that may not necessarily have the mental capacity to live and survive throughout these circumstances. Right?
How they treat them.
It's a study. This one doesn't have that same type of heaviness to it to make you want to explore more or dive in deep. And it's not necessarily meant for you to empathize with anything that Arthur Fleck's going through. Like the first one, you can see how society affected him. Even though you know he did so much wrong, you still understand what happened to make that progression go through.
The mitigating circumstances.
Yes. So there's so many issues, but I still don't think it's as bad as the ratings like on Rotten Tomatoes or people are just blowing it up. I don't think it deserves that necessarily. Again, not great, but it's not complete trash. I appreciate some of the directional takes on here. People may not agree with it, may not like it, but I appreciate them at least going outside the box, trying something different. You took a risk. Not everything is going to be a good risk to take.
Otherwise, it wouldn't be a risk.
It's definitely a risk. Right. Like, there are definitely multiple risks taken in this movie.
Yes.
Because the flow and things like that aren't necessarily there. But this is not like Madam Web level bad.
I would totally agree, and I'll just draft behind you on what you were saying, because I think I'm going to say there are some parts of this movie that are great, but I don't think anybody's going to be happy about this movie, because if you are a fan of musicals and you like that introduced into movies, the themes of this movie are so dark, you're going to hate it. And if you are a big fan of the Joker franchise that was set up with the first movie or any of the other movies, or, you know, through written work, this isn't going to satisfy you either. So there is no end to the people this movie will not satisfy.
So, the very beginning, the whole cartoon with the shadow.
Yeah.
Did you all pick up on the foreshadowing of that to the very end? Like, when you go back and look, he had a shadow.
But I don't want to go back. That's what I'm trying to tell you.
We're supposed to be analyzing the movie. So, in your mind, go back and look.
For the next few minutes, we have to go back.
Yeah. You're the one that wanted to record today on Joker.
You're right.
So, went and saw it because Gover said to. And now we're talking about it because Gover said to. So, suck it up, Buttercup. We're talking about it. You're going to look back.
So let me shank you.
Thank you very much.
That's life, baby.
That's entertainment.
Wow, the references are plentiful.
But you could pick up on something else happening here. And then once you look back at what was being shown on screen with the guy that ends up killing Arthur Fleck, he's the one that becomes the Joker. Like, that is the Joker.
That is an interpretation.
That isn't... Well, that's the director's interpretation.
Okay.
So that is the Joker right there, because Arthur Fleck is not the actual Joker. He denounces it. He says, I am not it. Well, you have this guy who has been shadowing him the entire time. And the quick flashes, right? We never identify the name, never identify who he is, but you see the smile, you see the little laughter, the imitations, things like that. He's the one that is the Joker. And so you see the shadow foreshadowing. So those are the things I like. They planted little seeds throughout it to let you know what's going to happen. And then as the moment. I appreciate that moment in directorial takes, because I don't think the audience I was in there with got a lot of it. They didn't go there to see a psychological type of film. They went there, they were thinking action, because when you have the moment where he flashes to where he hits Harvey Dent over the head with the chair, somebody finally said, finally. Like
really?
They're waiting for that moment. I heard audibly said finally. I was like,
well, I think there's a lot of fans that were saying, when are you going to get to the fill in the blank?
right. The Joker part of the movie.
Yeah.
So that's where the disappointment and the non-satisfaction, I think, will come in for those people.
Right. They wanted the violence. They wanted more of the crowds. They wanted more of like what happens and like the physical manifestation of the Joker, whereas this is mental in this movie.
Yeah, and this is all still set up. Like, they're still setting up the character. This is all prequel stuff with little tie-ins to Batman and everything like that. But that's all this was. And maybe the expectations were not that for people because we didn't get much in a trailer. What the expectations were for this to help set people up for the story.
And they didn't give a critic screening for this in our area, which is usually a sign they don't want us talking about it or writing about it before it hits theaters. They knew they had a problem. All right, I'm going to jump into, we haven't mentioned her at all. Lady Gaga is, the only other big character in this film, and even her role isn't huge. This is a Arthur Fleck film, but I love Lady Gaga. I think she is a terrific actress, and I thought she was great in this one. And I think she's also a great singer. But every time this movie went to a special place where there's a revelation, you learn something special, something changes, they didn't give you even a millisecond to take that in. They immediately went to a musical number, which blocked the storytelling, took me out of it, stopped the momentum of the movie, and I think diminished every major moment. I was really disappointed. I love Lady Gaga. I think she did a terrific job acting. There's absolutely nothing wrong with her singing. It was the directorial choice of how they put the music in here. And I like musicals, but this just didn't work for me.
So we've talked about on this show before about how I'm just not musicals for me. It takes a special one to be like, oh, I get it.
I thought about you while I was watching this. I'm like, Gover, oh, he must be hating this.
But I didn't find, okay, let me back up and just say that I did think the musical part of it didn't work. They could have done it probably 3 different times. They could have done it when the whole concept is introduced. They're in the singing class, they meet, and then she kind of sings, and then he kind of doesn't really want to sing. Maybe he does like one line, but that's about it, right? And that works. That's fine. Okay. Then there's another one in the middle that I think probably worked okay. I don't remember what one it was because, again, I don't care. But the last one, though, that was actually the best one. But by that time, you're fatigued and you're tired of the idea, right?
And even a character on screen says, not another song.
Right.
Right? So that's where we were.
For sure. And he's talking for the audience. But I think the last one where he's at the payphone and he's like, I want you to come back. I want you to be there. And then he starts singing to her. That was the most natural out of all of them.
Sure.
Because their whole relationship, again, asterisk, my opinion, in his brain, right? This whole thing's a fantasy, right?
Yep.
Their whole relationship is built on this music class, this singing class that is in Arkham. So if that's the case, he, of course, is going to relate to music for her, and he's going to want to connect with her, so he's going to sing this song on the phone with her.
Right.
That worked just fine. It was probably the best example of the entire concept, but it was the last one. I'm already exhausted and don't care about the concept anymore.
They used up all the goodwill they had before that came.
If he's courting her at the beginning with that, you might have me more buy-in. But I just didn't have, by that time I was like, yeah, okay, whatever. So for me, it was 3 songs. The first one, which was her introduction of the 2 of them to the singing class. The second one, again, the one I don't remember. And then the last one. Those all worked. The 5 or 6 in the middle seemed forced.
5 or 6.
They stopped. Well, maybe there was more. I don't know.
I even just saying that, I think there's more, but to say that's a lot.
Some of them were longer than others. Some of them were short, like interludes,
for sure.
Yeah, type of thing.
But again, I think if I can rescue it, reputation wise, understanding that they built it off the singing class, and then everything in between, all the singing was in his crazy brain.
Yeah. But I think they could have conveyed his crazy brain with those numbers being 45 seconds.
I completely agree.
But there's no reason they had to go as long as they did.
Once they decided they had to commit.
They stretched out the TV shows. They had 2 different TV show, I think, ones, and they stretched those out. It was like, give me those in 30, 45-second doses and call it a day. Why do I need we all know that that's not real because of the situation that they're in. They're not on TV in full outfits, free to do what they want. That is a fantasy. With that part, we do know. So why are we doing this for 5 minutes?
And a couple more things on Lady Gaga. I think some people are going to be disappointed in underutilization of her vocal talent. People were probably expecting a big belting tune. No,
I care about that.
You don't. There are going to be plenty of her fans.
It doesn't work with the project.
I know. I'm just saying there's going to be some people they're going to want a big belty number.
Well,
for her voice.
she had the dual piano one.
Had that, yes.
Yeah.
And then the other side, I felt like utilizing her in dialogue was not used enough. Like in terms of actually driving story.
Yeah.
Focusing the music part was used a lot. This is where it goes into the whole Arthur Fleck thing. It was more of his story. She was just supporting character. Yeah. But it wasn't marketed as that as much.
Oh, no.
It was marketed as
the two of them.
Double. Right?
The FOLIE A DEUX.
Right. Hey, there we go.
Sorry.
It means two people, him and her.
Marvin the Martian is joining the conversation.
I don't know.
We didn't get the Looney Tunes intro.
Welcome, Marvin.
You gotta,
Boy, when the WB is going to really use it, they're going to just dive right in. But I wanted more character development from her to fully understand her obsession just with Joker. Because, again, she didn't say Arthur at all until the very end. She said Joker.
She wanted the Joker.
Right, wanted the Joker. But it kind of looks into the whole... We start getting Inception here a little bit, right? Because like how you even said, is it all fantasy in his head? What part is fantasy? At the very end, is she actually on those stairs? Or did she off herself with the gun during that song, listening on the answer machine?
Right.
I mean, there's questions there. Now, the director says she's really there and walks off.
Yeah, she's really there because it's a figment of his imagination.
Right, because we have an unreliable narrator.
Right.
Yes.
So, but I think that's probably what the director wants.
Yes.
For discussion purposes. We're not supposed to necessarily know. It's the whole, anchor thing spinning in Inception.
The vision could have been, it's not exactly clear.
That's what I'm going for, because not every movie is clear in what is supposed to be done or not. They want you to have to talk about it or discuss it or think about it. I think it's what they're going for.
And frankly, those were my favorite parts of this movie. Because in the first movie, we had definitely what you laid out before. Is it nature or nurture? Is it, the person who has something wrong with them? Is it society that makes them that way? Is it, those are all questions that were asked in the first movie. In this movie, he's asking himself, who am I? And I loved that they had two very good actresses being the foils to the two different sides. So Catherine Keener, playing his lawyer, is trying to tell everybody he's Arthur and he's got a problem. And Lady Gaga's character is trying to convince him, no, you are the Joker, and that's why I'm interested in you, and I only want to be interested in you because of the Joker. So, they're fighting it out, these two different, we'll say, influences on him, and I loved that.
Which is symbolic of the two personalities that he's dealing with mentally.
Exactly. They're voicing those personalities.
Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, to me, there was great themes in this movie, that you could just expand upon in a whole bunch of different ways. And for that reason, I really I liked the casting of Lady Gaga and, what she was like. She was like what the fan base out in the streets that loved the Joker were dressing as him and idolize him and crowding around the van. Like, she was the representation inside prison and in the courtroom and anytime they had together of that side that was pulling him. We want you. We need you. It's not about you. We need you to be this. All right, let's get to scores and why we liked or disliked and why we gave it a score numerically to Jeremy. Go over first.
Joaquin Phoenix's commitment to the character should be commended. Lady Gaga was great as Harley. And I got to be honest, I'm not a DC fan per se, but there's been so many different Harley Quinns, it seems like. And of course, Margot Robbie is the standard and all that. I was just like, really? Do we need another intonation of this character? And she was great. I
loved it.
The movie was beautiful to look at times. When he's walking in the rain, right? It's from the
overhead
chaos and noise of Arkham at the beginning of the movie to where he goes to this kind of more of a peaceful wing where they're singing and it's and it's well lit and all these people are not in handcuffs, that kind of thing, right? So the transition there in the rain, right, was symbolic, of course, of him crying and inside and all that, and the umbrellas go up. Boom, 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 synced, and then they're all different colors for the. It's beautiful to look at times. None of that means it's great, and that's sad. I think Jim and Bradford have been right this whole time. There's less sustenance here than there was in the first one, and it's not about playing it back, rolling it back. The Phoenix is great, Gaga is great, but the story. Not even because of the music, although that is certainly an argument you can make, and I'll listen to it. The story is just there. It's not. There's nothing really great about it, and I do think it's about 20 minutes longer than it needs to be. So, for those reasons, I'm giving it a 6. I'm not entertained. Okay, it wasn't a waste of my time, but I'm not a better person for having seen it, and I'm not a worse person for having seen it. It's just kind of blah. But because of the performances and the gorgeousness of the look of it, it bumps it over an average movie. I give it a 6.
I was just going to say that I believe what you're describing, you would have went way lower if it weren't for some of those performances and the beauty of it.
Oh, no question.
Like that really bumped up some bonus points for you. So I was not expecting a 6 from you.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's something that I wrestled with because I can tell you, the original Joker movie from 2019 is an excellent movie in my opinion. But did I enjoy it? No, because this is not a movie to enjoy. And for Joker 2, I'm going to say this is, I think, a very good movie in many regards. You've talked about the acting. I agree. Cinematography, the music, soundtrack, and score, and the mixing between the two, I thought was great. I also thought, there's just it checked so many boxes of this is great work. My only problem really was when the music stopped the storytelling. So for that reason, I didn't enjoy this movie. I'm giving it an 8. I loved the craft in this movie. I think you could sit in a film school and I think you could talk about this for maybe a week and people would have really great insights. So much stuff was well done. There's just a few choices that just knock a few points off for me. So I know I'm totally an island, I think, in this view, but let's see.
I get it.
Jeremy,
I get it.
Jeremy hated it. Gave it some credit for some.
Hate's a strong word.
Okay, I don't want to put that in your mouth, but yeah, you had a lot of problems with it.
I hated Transformers: Rise of the Beasts. That's what I hated.
But you gave it credit for a lot of the things it did right. Where do you go with that, Justin Bradford?
I see what you're saying, Jim. I truly do, because there are so many beautiful points from a directorial standpoint when you look at it as art. From the cinematography,
yes,
from the way things are shot, angles, music. If you were wanting to design a score that makes you feel uneasy, you just point to every time that I believe it's a cello is hitting.
It's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And boy, oh boy, is it just kind of just you feel so uneasy of what's going to happen next.
Used to perfection
in both movies.
Yep.
Like there's that consistency between both films with that where you just hear the lone string playing. It's very well crafted. So that's why I agree. It's a case study in terms of what a beautiful film can look like, even if the story necessarily isn't flowing the way you want it to, or the movie itself is not great per se. There's so many elements within what Todd Phillips has done here that makes it a beautiful looking film and great work of art. So my problems with it, like the third act, so long. I checked my watch twice during the third act.
Not good.
And that's not good because, like, I'm still interested in the story. Overall, it still has me to where I want to learn and know what's going to happen because I'm not calling it yet. You get that feeling that there's going to be that twist or something like that's going to happen. I didn't necessarily know it was going to end the way that it did. But I'm like, can we get to it? Because y'all dragging this a little bit. Yeah. I wanted a little bit more of dialogue from Harley Quinn. A little bit more of an exploration to where we see more of her character. But there's not really necessarily a setup here because I feel like this is the end of this part. There's no need to explore more. The whole DC's going a different direction, right?
Right.
So we're not going to get any more. Therefore, I wanted a little bit more of her character developed here because I don't know if we're going to get more Lady Gaga. I doubt it.
Right.
As Harley Quinn.
It was so interesting. Her take on it and her, like, lying about who she was and how she
because you can
became
see that
a
the
fangirl.
psychology, professor
Right.
in her with how she's studying Joker, right?
Right.
The moments I think that got me that were very well acted and that tore at my heart were in the courtroom with Gary Puddles.
Oh, I think one of the strongest scenes in the movie, without a doubt.
Yeah. Just
even people who didn't like the movie whatsoever thought that scene was powerful.
Just tears at you, and you also see in Arthur Fleck's mind what is going on. Gears are turning. There's just something that is going on there to be like, oh my God, what have I done? I need to accept responsibility. All those different types of things, right? But I thought that was a very powerful moment with Gary Puddles. And, some people aren't going to understand. They can't get over some of the other emotions that are going on there. There's a couple laughs, but I think there were awkward laughs because they don't know how to react to certain things. That's what people do sometimes. But I thought there were so many good performances in this as well, which makes me wonder, I can't really put my finger on one thing that makes it to where it's not great. Because there's so many good things, but there's just something didn't click.
Just shy of it.
So with that, I'm going with a 6.5. It's just hard for me to go over that because I didn't leave there feeling exhilarated or wanting to really talk about it with a lot of people other than you guys. I have my opinion. I thought there were good things that happened through it. The whole theater kid fever dream, I think, really sticks with this because that's what it feels like when the music came in. It didn't bother me as much because I could understand the choice of it, even if it wasn't the best choice. I understood why they tried.
It's one of those, I had that problem where I'm applauding how audacious a decision was, even if it didn't hit.
Every time, yeah. There were some times when it really did hit, and you get sucked back in, you're going, okay, whoa. Other times you're going, okay, come on. We didn't need it this time. Yeah. So I still don't know if I can consider this a musical because of the way that it's portrayed. Because musicals, oftentimes, I feel like the songs are supposed to help drive a story.
Not oftentimes. To me, that is the definition of a musical.
Right. Your
songs drive the story forward.
You're telling the story through music, right?
Yes.
Here, a song stops to let the characters have their monologue moment, which is different.
Or the symbolicness of the lyrics.
Right. Think Shakespeare. When Hamlet goes off and does his to be or not to be, that's not driving the story. That is Hamlet going off and contemplating within his own mind.
Exploring his own character.
Exactly. That's what this... Am I getting too deep for you?
I don't. Yeah.
I love this.
I don't.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
That's what that moment is. Every single one of these songs is a to be or not to be type of moment where there's self-exploration going on in their own character. I just thought of that. Oh my gosh.
That was really good.
Thanks.
I wish I understood it.
Let's all answer, including you, our audience, the big question.
The big question, every episode of the Untitled Film Project Podcast is set up because we are a spoiler podcast. So we always tell you to go see the movie and then come listen or come watch. And with that comes spoilers because we want to be in the conversation with you after you leave the theater. So we make every episode, though, spoiler-free, if you will, at least portions of it, with the big question. The big question this week, of course, is what actor, in your opinion, has jumped the shark, and when did they do that? What project were you maybe a big fan of theirs or respected them at least, and then thought to yourself, oh, doesn't have it anymore? Right? That's what we want to know. Leave it in the comments below if you're watching on YouTube, or, of course, you can add us on social media as well. Let's start with Jim.
All right, this is a real problem because my
what's a problem?
Answer is the lead actor of this movie before this movie. So
really?
So if you would have asked me, hey, what actors jumped the shark? This is a little recency bias, right, within the last year or so. But when I went to go see Napoleon, I said to myself, Joaquin Phoenix, who's had jump the shark worthy moments in many people's minds, he jumped the shark with that performance. It hurt me. It was just like, wow, I have respect. Even though I don't like everything that you do, I like a lot of what you do. I respect you, but it was silly. It was awful. It was terrible. The Napoleon movie was destroyed by him unhinged. And then he redeemed himself when it was 5 minutes into Joker 2 that I go, oh, maybe he didn't jump the shark. So it still remains to be seen. He has at least temporarily jumped the shark last year. And this one makes me think maybe I'm wrong. We'll see what happens with the next project.
All right. Bradford, do you want me to go next? I can go next if you want me to.
I mean, mine's going to be a very different answer, so I might as well go now.
Okay. Yeah.
It was difficult for me to think of one. So I'm going with a television series.
Okay.
Oh, interesting.
So Once Upon a Time. Are you all familiar with that?
ABC Sunday nights. It was, it was like a modern day take on the fairy tales and
fairy
nursery
tales,
rhymes.
but they're actually real people and how, they have the spell over them and everything like that. I feel like after season 1, so in all of season 1, they're all still kind of under this spell of that they're real people, even though there's so many context clues of who's Snow White, who's the evil queen, who's Prince Charming, who's Rumpelstiltskin. All these things that are in their fairy tales are real characters. After season 1, that spell is lifted and people remember who they were. They couldn't find their identity in the show anymore. So, like, only one season, you get rid of the whole thing that was the premise of this that made it unique, where people are talking about, when are they going to figure this out? Well, they figure it out after one season, and it goes on for multiple seasons. Not the show that was awful, but that's what hooked me in that first season was the exploration of fairy tale characters being under a spell, not knowing their true selves, but you see those little tidbits of information in there. So, like, that series so quickly jumped the shark to where it couldn't identify itself ever again after the moment, because you cannot go back to that moment. You can't go back to the moment from what it was.
Some shows need a season to find their groove and their identity. This one had it from the beginning and lost it. That's exactly when I stopped watching, is a couple episodes into the second season.
Fair.
So I couldn't agree with you more.
It's kind of like Jim and Pam when they finally get together. The Office kind of becomes, it's funny, but it's just not, it's less interesting.
Well, that's a whole episode unto itself. You know, the unresolved romantic things, then all of a sudden that romantic thing gets resolved and it becomes boring.
Everybody wants to see it. It happens. They finally give it to you. And then they're like, oh. And the intrigue's gone. My answer to this question of who has jumped the shark and when is Eddie Murphy. Axel F. If you look at the Untitled Film Project Pod.com, I've written it. I like that movie. I liked it a lot. I thought it was awesome. It was a very welcome revisit to that character, and I hope that he continues on that path for sure. What I mean, though, is in 1998, he had done Dr. Dolittle, Nutty Professor. He did Beverly Hills Cop 3, but we'll forget that. He did Boomerang, which is a cult hit. Harlem Nights had its moments. Coming to America obviously was awesome, right? So there's all kinds of things that he was kind of on this. 8 out of every 10 projects were like, oh, it's at least going to be decent, right? Mm-hmm. And then you have, starting in '98 after Dr. Dolittle, Holy Man, Bowfinger, Life, Dr. Dolittle 2, which was okay. Showtime, and then here's the moment where you're like, he's lost it. The Adventures of Pluto Nash. At that point, you're like, I forgot about that one. It's over. Me too. Yeah. Well, you know what? He'd love to as well, I'm sure.
Yeah.
It was brutal. So, yeah, Adventures of Pluto Nash was the moment that I lost faith that anything Eddie Murphy can do is just not bulletproof, but it's like, well, I'll at least be entertained. Might not be good cinema or a good product, but at least I'll laugh during it and I'll have a good time. Mm-hmm. And then once Adventures of Pluto Nash came, that was the end of that.
All right, here's a question that goes with that, Gover, is like sometimes people, maybe it coincides with I'll do any script as long as the check clears. Because there comes a time with some actors where it seems like, did you care or read this before you agreed to do it? And then it happens multiple times and you're thinking, wow, they're just paying like a yacht off or something and they just are just doing whatever. Well, that's what it felt like.
John Travolta has done that twice in his career. He had a run early in the late 70s, obviously early 80s, where it was like, oh, okay.
Megastar.
And then he just fell into obscurity. And then Pulp Fiction resurrected him.
Right.
And then he did like Phenomenon and like, all these kind of big budget movies. He kind of was back, right? And now if you look at John Travolta's IMDb, he's done all kinds of direct-to-video stuff.
Yeah, so he's jumped
And commercials.
He's jumped twice.
He's collecting a paycheck. Yeah, he's jumped twice. He's stripped 2 sharks. So, again, Eddie Murphy to me is just like, okay, like that. I interpret the question as, when did I just stop caring about their projects anymore?
Yep.
Pluto Nash was it for Eddie Murphy. For me.
All right. What is it for you, those of you that have been listening and watching?
Norbit.
this?
Let's not forget Norbit. Sorry. I'll throw that one more in there. Sorry.
Oh, my God.
Sorry.
That triggers me because I have a friend who that's their favorite movie of all time.
Oh!
And we have words. We have discussions.
Sorry about that.
But we want to know, what are those things for you? What, was that moment where you realized that project or that actor or actress jumped the shark and I don't care anymore? Let us know. Hit us up on socials. Give us a comment. Whatever it takes. Come by our house,
Whoa.
Write a note, throw it, put it on a rock, throw it through the window. I'll give you Bradford's address coming up.
Hey!
Thank you for listening to the Untitled Film Project Podcast. To support the show, please rate, review, follow, and subscribe. Original music by Jeremy Schwartz. Special thanks to the Music City Film Critics Association. Editing and post-production by Jeremy K. Gover. Voiceover by Chad Bennett.